Hi, and welcome to the Geula Mamas show. I'm Tivi Goodman. I'm a midwife, doula, mommy, Safta, and the host of the Geula Mamas show. I'm very excited to be joined today by Chaya Hinda Allen. Hi, Chaya Hinda. This is so fun.
Hi, Tivi. So nice to meet you.
Chaya Hinda is from the north of England. She came to Israel for seminary at age 18, and she stayed. Wow. Now, 30 years later, mother to 11, Baruch Hashem, grandmother to almost that too, she helps Jewish women with life's challenges that feel just too big or that really are too big through her Living Consciously online community. This is so exciting. I'm really, really excited. And we met at Geula Day in Yerushalayim. I mean, Amunah Day in Yerushalayim, right?
Amunah Day, right.
Yeah, that was really special.
It was something extraordinary, yeah.
My goodness, wow. So, Hinda, how did you even get into doing this? First of all, you know what, before we even talk about how you got into it, can you give us like a sentence or two that describes what it is you're doing? What does this mean? How do you support these women? What sort of workshops are you doing?
Basically, I do workshops in a number of different ways. I have live workshops here in Eretz Israel, like around the country, either in Yerushalayim, in Beitar, where I live, sometimes in Beit Shemesh, or I travel further afield to just different yeshuvim and places. Wherever there's a group of women that want to get together, that's where I go basically, and I do online. So the people that can come to a live class, it's often a lot more fun when we're live, because we just have, we have a lot of fun when we get together. When you get together with Jewish women in a room, we have a lot of fun. And there's always, exciting questions, and there's the real life experience of women going through transformations, which is always exciting to witness live. But second best is definitely, still a really good experience is when we get together online, because the Jewish community with Jewish workshops is also like a virtual community where women type in, and so we stay. There's a feel of doing it together. It's not just a presentation. So what do? Is we try and reconnect with what is our purpose, where are we going, and why are we stuck on the way going there? Because it's a very, very dark, hidden world. And so a lot of our purpose is concealed, and a lot of the struggle and the why we're going through this struggle is concealed. And women are trying to do their best in so many different situations. They don't always feel that they're getting anywhere. A lot of the time, that's also part of the hiddenness, is that we're going and we're trying and we're doing so much, we don't always see the light coming in. And so that's often a bit confounding. So it's about encouragement. It's about empowerment. What can we do to help ourselves be the best us that we can be? And about knowing that even if I don't see or experience right now that there's a change in the externals, but I've already succeeded if I'm being my best self. I've already succeeded if I'm bringing the best of my faith to whatever struggle I'm undergoing right now. And that's really what we do, I guess.
That's so beautiful. I'm doing, we're in the time period now called the 72 Days of Chesed. So I'm part of Rabbi Aryeh Niven's Chabur. I've been for 6 years. And he tells us that during this time period, if we do a very minute, small avoda, that Hashem just expands it, which is very exciting. Every year I see amazing things. So this year I'm actually doing my avoda very similarly to what you're talking about, how that tape that runs through our brain. And if I'm doing one thing, there's this tape that says, oh, but you should be doing something else, or you should be doing it better, or you should be and it just sort of ruins all that light, and there's these little moments that you connect with it, but it can be so hard. So I absolutely appreciate what you're talking about. I'm going to have to look into it for myself. This sounds really interesting.
One of our major problems is perfectionism, is that voice that's constantly never enough, never good enough, never big enough, never pure enough, never whatever it is, you know, everything is always tainted in some way, never good enough. And the truth is that we're always good enough for Hashem to love us. And that's the bottom line.
I read somewhere that, you know, we expect ourselves to be above human, but Hashem made humans. He loves us. He loves us with our mistakes and our failures. We're not supposed to be malachim.
Right.
So how did you get through this path? You were in England. Tell us a little bit about how you got from your childhood to today. This is fascinating. About, like, how did you fall into what you're doing? Did you plan this out, you know, years in advance?
Oh, no, nothing was really planned. I mean, Kadosh Baruch Hu had it planned very clearly. When I look back, it looks like it's like obvious and clear, but at the time, you know, nothing was obvious and clear. But I was in a very small community where everybody mattered, everybody was contributing, and so I was very involved in youth work. I grew up in a very, very tight and warm community where, like, I was related to half of the community, and half my family was busy running the community center, and so it was very natural that I went into community work and working with younger children and working with, as I grew older, then with teenagers. And so I had a lot of experience, not only with working with the children, but also with the community at large. I remember that we had a very forward-thinking youth worker who decided that the teenagers who were busy running the youth groups, that they should also sit in on the community center meetings. And I remember one particular meeting, they were blasting our youth worker for things that they were paying his wages and they thought he wasn't doing the right job. And I decided, you know, it's not my place to be here actually and hear all of this. And I got up and walked out. And I just remember thinking that working with a community is really not so simple. And there's always going to be people who are disgruntled. And so I really, I mean, that was like kind of just like another view from the inside of the kinds of politics and inner workings of how communities work that I was privy to, like, again, not wanting to, but like just kind of fell into it. And so I got to see many different angles of work with the community while I was still very young. And so it didn't bother me to have people complain about what I did when I got older, because I knew they were going to complain. And so that's really, like, developing that immunity was very, very important. So when I came to Eretz Israel and married and came to move to Beitar, when it was just a few streets, now Baruch Hashem, it's a really, I look outside my window and it's a gorgeous large city. It's beautiful, and I rejoice with every single house that goes up. When we first came, it was very, very small. There were less than 50 English-speaking families, and we just needed to build something. And I remember the Rav asked me to please form an ashay, because the women didn't have any way to get together. So it was soon after my fourth child was born. And basically I just said, okay, we're going to do this. And a small group of us got together and we formed the nucleus of what is today an extremely well-run, highly functioning ashay. Then it was really nothing. We just started with social events, and then we expanded to Shabbos meals for people who had babies, and we expanded to a crisis committee and all kinds of different help and fundraising. The fundraising went through many different Gilgulim. We did plays. I remember one of my friends we were doing plays with, at one point she said, you know, if we would all have hired ourselves out to clean in people's houses, we probably would have raised more money than doing this play. But the truth is we had so much fun during the play that was part of the reason, was also the amazing energy that was, and the togetherness and the community spirit that was fostered by the plays that we did. And nowadays, there's an incredible network that almost functions automatically. I mean, there's a lot of hours of put in of a Mishloach Manas project, where from all over Beitar, people can send Mishloach Manas to everybody else in Beitar for minimum fee, and that way we don't have to deliver to absolutely everybody, and we fulfill the Reish L'Re'ehu, that, you know, I thought about you, even though I'm not bringing something myself over, with that one basket that comes from the Neshay, and everybody appreciates it, and a lot of money is raised that now goes to support all of the chesed activities. So I, Baruch Hashem, was able to watch that all grow and develop. And at the time when we first moved in, like, there was nothing happening. Everybody had like 2, 3, 4 small children. Now you can go to a wedding every night, a bar mitzvah every night. There is shirim. There's, there's so many things going on. But then there was really nothing, and we were very isolated, and everybody left their families at home. And so forming that community, and again, just dealing with people, because you're not going to make everybody happy all the time. In fact, you're going to make some people really angry some of the time when you work with, Baruch Hashem, opinionated Jewish people, Baruch Hashem. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun knowing that it's okay. You can ride the waves. You're going to, if you're really out to help people, then you'll end up helping some people. And so I always know that if somebody complains about something, great. It just means that I'll try to do it differently next time. It doesn't mean that I have to close up shop. And so that gave me the confidence to launch a lot of different projects, even if they weren't perfect. So I know a lot of women who years ago came to me with ideas, and I'm like, yeah, go ahead, do it. Just like put it out there. And they're like, no, I need to do market research first. I need to prepare the ground. I need to, find out all kinds of things. And I'm like, just do it already. And years later, they still haven't done it. They're still not launched. They're still doing market research. And I think the best way of doing market research is get something out there. And then you betcha, if you do it wrong, people let you know about it. That's how you do market research. People tell you, I don't like that, or you could do this better. And that way you get to improve your product if you can just be a little bit brave. And so that's what I encourage people to do. Like, don't wait around until it's perfect.
And I think for some of us, it takes maybe a lot brave, I mean, for me, I know people, right now we're on the Geula Mamas show, okay? How many years was I thinking about it? I mean, I did have, my son had special needs and everything, but there were a lot of, travels that I had to go through. And even right now, I have a project that I'm working on. And I'm telling myself the same thing from all the research that I've been doing, but it's really hard. And I think from the other side, sometimes you have a lot of voices saying the opposite, like get things more perfect, do things better, especially as Torah Jews. I mean, like I had once a friend who's really careful about Shmirat HaLashon. She's really careful. And then she called me up right before Rosh Hashanah in a panic because she went to a shiur and the Rav was like coming down hard on Shmirat HaLashon. But she was already careful, so careful about it. And she started to freak out about every word she'd ever said. I said, the Rav was not talking to you. That was not for you to hear, because we get so worried about getting things right and doing Ratzon Hashem that it can make it so scary to do anything, because we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or do anything wrong.
That's right. So we check it out with, a bunch of people, and we ask around. We don't rely on ourselves. Baruch Hashem, we get guidance. But once we have guidance and we have a basic direction and we test it out, we anyway are not going to test something out with thousands of people, because no, you're not going to get thousands of people coming to whatever it is that you start with. But you could start with 20, you could start with 15. I mean, my first class, I begged 5 friends to come and listen to me, and they did it. They came and just fired questions at me. So that was okay. If you can just take that, that's okay. And then from 5, then you get 6. And from 6, 1 drops out and 2 more can't make it, but a third brings another 3 friends. And so, it's just like, it works out. Things work out differently. We do need to have not confidence in ourselves, but confidence in Hashem's guidance, that Hashem's guiding me, Hashem's helping me. My goal is really to help. I've checked it out. I'm not doing something wrong. I've checked it out with people, right? I have a rabbi, I have people guiding me. And now all I have to do is be prepared to take some flack. That's really what it is. I have to be prepared that some people aren't going to like it. That's okay. It's okay if some people don't like it.
I think that so many of us after that first class would have just said, forget it, it's not working, forget it. You have a tenacity that you are continuing. I think that it's amazing. I think you should give yourself a pat on the back for it, because with myself, I know.
Well, I'm telling you, again, it's born from my community training. I really went through it was a cauldron of community buzzing, and everybody had an opinion. Everybody had 5 opinions, and none of them were quiet about it. And so I just grew up understanding that that's how it is, you know, that's how it is. So if you want to do something, just be prepared. That's going to be part of the pickle. So I guess I mean, yeah.
That's amazing. It really gave you that training, because I do look around and I have had that conversation with other women saying, I want to do this, but I want to do this, but, and again, like, even if someone gets to the stage where they're trying it out, it's so hard to say, forget it, I tried it, nobody wanted it, forget it. You know, or people didn't like it, forget it. And it's chaval. Chaval, it's too bad.
It's also, we judge ourselves based on the immediate results. And what Yutsiri just said to me before, actually before we began, was that we may not get people right away listening, but who knows, in 5 years' time, somebody will just decide to turn this on. And I know that from experience. People, I remember I gave some class like last year, and a woman spoke to me recently, and she said, that one line that you said in class, it was amazing. I'm like, which one line? I have no idea what I said. After I said it, I forgot what I said already. And she said, I wrote it down and I read it every day. Okay, great, whatever it was, you know. You never know what line is going to speak to a person. And sometimes a woman said to me, you know, that whole series I took was worth it just for this one thing that you gave. Great, whatever you liked, you know. If you can give a lot and you can keep giving, but when you just have the Siyata D'Shmaya to say that right thing, that just this woman needed to hear that day. When people say that to me, you know, you gave me such hope, or you just made that difference. For me, that makes it all worthwhile. All the people that said they didn't like this, or you wrote that wrong, or you know, you got this technical thing that wasn't right. You know how many times the technical things just don't go exactly right. You know, I'm sending out an email and the link didn't work, and I get people saying the link didn't work. Okay, so we fix the link and we send it out again. My husband and I have a joke, like every now and again we like to send out an email with link fix, just to make sure we know how to still do it. Like, it's okay, we send out link fix emails. It's okay if you get it wrong, that you just try again, you just send it out again. It's okay, people will get it in the end. They'll know that even if you get it wrong, so they'll get the right one soon. It doesn't have to be perfect.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is profound, because I think that so much of what we're getting is get more perfect. I mean, we know that we're not supposed to be perfect, that we don't have to be, we're not made to be perfect, but there still is the underlying, like you said, the link didn't work. This is, you know, sometimes, oh my gosh, you know, as a mom sending kids to school in Israel, with the machberets that they have to have, like this day needs this. It's like you need some degree in machberet organizing, you know? So like I got the kids out the door and everyone actually got to school on time and nobody was crying and nobody had, you know, peanut butter on their shirt. And then they forgot some machberet and like the world falls apart. You know, it's like, I'm sorry, teacher. I'm human. Like, get over it, you know?
Right.
There's so much under the surface.
Nothing more sobering than just being reminded that we're human.
Yeah. So, okay, so you started with the Nishay and you started giving classes in your community, but you didn't stop there. Where has it gone since there?
Well, what happened was we went, being far away from parents and from community and raising, Baruch Hashem, nice-sized family, that brings with it its own kind of challenges, you know, its own kind of situations. And whatever the children were going through, all of a sudden, we were like in the middle of a number of crises at the same time. And I felt that I just didn't have the tools to deal with it. That life just got too big all of a sudden. And so I started to search. And because I found that my inner resources were not meeting the pressure that I was under. And so what I discovered, I was guided to actually to take the course of the Rabbanit Sarah Yosef that she was giving at that time in Bnei Brak. And the big transformative truth that I learned with her was how to use our imagination. Because I have a very active imagination, and it knew how to go downhill very fast. That's what I could do. I could go from like 100 to 0, like in no time at all. Just like, oh no. I could catastrophize about anything, and I was very worried and stressed. And so that was really compounding what was going on. And so that's part of what I teach today, is that whatever's going on, we can compound that a million times by the way that we're thinking and stressing ourselves about it, or we can create a lot of peace in addition to whatever the situation is going on. And that really is in our hands. So there's a lot of the situations that we deal with that are not under our control, but there's so much that really is. And so that's what I began to understand, is how I use my imagination is also creating and manifesting more of whatever I'm living with in my life. So if I'm very, very stressed about a particular situation, I can magnify it. I can make it a lot bigger, and then I can create symptoms from my stress that didn't exist before. So I can make it a lot worse, actually, through how I use my imagination and how I think and communicate things to myself. When I talk about imagination, people think, wow, imagination means that you can, like, you must be very creative in writing, or you must be very creative in like dance or something, like maybe like it has to do with being artistic. No, imagine everybody has an imagination, and everybody is already expert in using their imagination. We just don't realize it. But the imagination is actually our tool for perceiving everything. Meaning what we were just talking about before, so we were talking about how we perceive launching a project. So you were talking about all of these voices. They're in your imagination. No one's actually standing next to you talking to you about it. Okay, it may be a voice of a teacher, maybe a voice of a parent, maybe a voice of a friend. It may be your own voice. You know, different people's voices are talking in your mind. You didn't call them in and say, hey guys, let's have a meeting. You know, that wasn't what happened. But they came in unannounced, and they sat down and they made themselves comfortable in your mind, and they're busy talking over you, right? They don't wait for you to allow them. They're interrupting you all the time, and they're telling you their opinion. Now, that's all in our imagination. And so first of all, what we have to learn to do is just take a step back and say, okay, so how do I experience my life? Because we experience our lives through our imagination. That's the prism. And everything that we experience goes first of all through our imagination, and then we perceive it. So some people are perceiving it in terms of what they're seeing. Some people are perceiving in terms of what they're hearing. They're mostly taking in the audio of what they're seeing, what they're experiencing. Some people are mostly taking in just how they feel about things. They go into a room and they feel the energy of this place. They feel how they are in some other place. Some people, it's about just the connections with the people who are there, and their whole experience is about the connections. I was speaking once with an Israeli woman. A family member, an American, had put her onto me, and so she couldn't take a class because my classes are not in Hebrew. She didn't understand Hebrew, but we spoke. We were mentoring, having a mentoring situation over the phone, and after a short discussion, it turns out that her imagination only worked in conversations. And everything was in terms of a conversation. So she was having a difficult situation. She had a lot of older children at home and that weren't married. And it was really stressing her out. And her husband was trying to talk to her words of emunah and faith and trust, and nothing was working. And so after a short discussion, it turned out that what was she hearing in her mind? She was hearing her mother talk about what a shame it was that her children weren't married, and she was doing things wrong, and they were too big, and that's why they weren't married. And she was hearing other people's conversations about her, about what a shame they're not married. And so in her mind, all she's hearing is other people's conversations about her, and that's why she's feeling so miserable all the time, because all she's walking around with these negative conversations all the time. And so I asked her to imagine it's the Shabbat Sheva Brachas, and all of these four, like the last of the four, these older singles are home, and they're all coming to Shabbos, all these new married couples that all got married in the last year. This is now the last Shabbat Sheva Brachas, and they're all coming. Imagine what it's like Erev Shabbos in the kitchen. And in my mind, I'm imagining like she's cooking, she's making foods. I said, what are you experiencing? And she said, I'm on the phone exchanging recipes about what I'm going to make. And it was fascinating to me, because it doesn't matter, like, I didn't want to impose upon her my vision or my experience, but hers was automatically in the conversations that were taking place, because her imagination works through conversations. And so once we understand how our own imagination works, that's what I began to understand then when I was taking with Rabbi Nisari Yosef, that we can change ourselves through understanding and then taking control of our imagination. Then I began to be able to teach that to other people, because I found that as soon as I opened up that portal into my own imagination, I changed. I just became a transformed person. And since I was reacting differently to the challenges that were at hand, I became different. And even the challenges began to change. They began to morph and just become something different, because as soon as we change, we have brought a different person to whatever the life situation is. Because we're a major component of whatever's going on in our lives. We prefer to think it's happening to us, but we're also impacting on it in a major way. So when we change, when we transform ourselves, then things do begin to change, and they do begin to get better. Most of the time, they do begin to get better. And so that's really the whole transformative process. Was first we understand, so how does my mind work? How can I then change that my perception, take control of it, so that it doesn't run me, but that I can guide my mind to where I want it to go, and therefore to where I want to go. So for example, in this example that we were then talking about launching a project, rather than having the voices say, it has to be better, it has to be more perfect, you can't launch until you have it exactly right, we will think of some new empowering phrase instead. Like, Hashem's helping me to make women happy. Hashem is helping me to impact positively in some minimal way. And I don't have to conquer the world, but I'm just doing my part. And as the mission in Pirkei says, it's not upon you to finish everything, but you're not free to opt out either. So I can, for me, it was very motivating to tell myself, I don't have to finish it, but I'm also not free to not do anything either. And as long as I'm sitting back and saying, well, it has to be perfect, that's also an opt-out. And so it's a responsibility to move forward with something that could help Klal Yisrael, rather than holding back because of worries about imperfection. If you have something good, let's share it already. And rely on the public to give us the feedback that we need. Again, we're not, as long as we checked it out, that we're not doing something wrong, that we're not doing something that has any questionable side to it. But once we check that out, we have guides to ask, then start to share. People will appreciate it.
I think sometimes it's hard to know, like I think of the story with Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So Hashem saying, Moshe, and he's like, I can't speak properly. Like, excuse me, Hashem says, I made you, right? But that's like this huge experience. When I have an idea, who am I, little old me, my ego's caught up in it, and I don't want to have an ego, we want to have good midot, and we want to be, nice Jewish girls. So it can be sometimes very difficult to know where that, where does that lie in? Is that voice Hashem talking to me and saying, put this thing in the world, or am I being, tsanua and a good girl by not doing it? It's sometimes really difficult to, even if you say, okay, go to your rabbi or go to your mentor, who do you go to? Because they all have opinions also, and it can just be really difficult to know, like, is this Ratzon Hashem or isn't that? And I think if any of us, got that letter or heard a thunderous sound and Hashem said, I want you to do this, but that doesn't seem to be the way it works in the world anymore these days, right?
It really is. We just need to know that that's really how it was. Let me give you a story, okay? Rebbetzin Luba Foyer, she should be well. She is the daughter of Rav Gifter Zatzal, the Telz Rosh Yeshiva, okay? Married to Avram Chaim Foyer, author and Rav. And so she, I think it must have been 10 years ago or so, she was taking my class. And she shared this in class with us, okay? She said that in her father's home, they had a custom that whenever they had a question about what they should do, they understood that in the next conversation they would get guidance about what they should do. And she brought an example. Okay, this is Rav Gifter. What I love about this is not like a Hasidic Rebbe or something, but this is a very Litvish Rosh Yeshiva, okay? So she said her sons were learning in Telz with their Zaidi during Zman, and it was coming up to Shavuos, and they didn't know should they stay in Yeshiva with their Zaidi for Shavuos or should they go home. And they were talking about it together. And then they said, you know what, let's wait for the next conversation. Let's see. So they went into the base medrash and they sat down. And the two bachrim in front of them were having a conversation. Should they stay in yeshiva for Yontif or should they go home? And they decided they were going to stay in yeshiva. And the two brothers looked at each other. They said, okay, there's our answer. We're staying in yeshiva. And that's how they decided what to do. And that's what Rebbetzin first said. That's what the custom in her father's home was. You understand, Hashem is guiding you. It's not stam that you overhear a conversation. You don't just stam overhear conversations. You don't just stam see a person. You didn't just take this book off the shelf for no reason. Meaning, if you have a question, I checked this out. After that, I checked this out with Rav Ashkenazi of the Boston College in Harnoff. He's also the first Torah editor for Hamodia newspaper. And I asked him a lot of these kinds of hashkafa questions. And he said, if a Jew has a question and he wants guidance, and he's asking Hashem to guide him, and then he receives an answer that answers his question from whatever's happening around him, he can accept that as an answer. It's not like you're going down the street and you see a Diet Cola can running in front of you, you say, oh, it must mean I'm supposed to go on a diet. That's not what we're talking about. But if I have a question and I get what seems to me to be an answer, then I can accept that as guidance from Hashem.
So not to run after everything and say, oh, it's a sign. This is a sign. This is a sign.
Right.
But
right.
All right, I'm going to give you a good example.
Okay.
I have not talked about the project that I'm working on just yet because I'm trying to get it right, and I'm trying to finish writing, and I'm trying to find the self-confidence to create this. But here we are having this conversation.
That's right.
So I'm going to announce to you, and I'm going to announce to everybody, which is like, okay, I am writing an online childbirth class. Okay.
Wow.
It bothers me that so many women are not able to get to a childbirth class. For me, a good childbirth class is life-changing. It changes your birth. It changes your shalom bayit. It changes your future. It changes your health. It changes your, physical. It changes everything, in my opinion. And I personally, in my story, have been to what I call a bad childbirth class and a good one. And the good one, like, mind blow, open up, set me on a whole new path to become eventually a midwife. And when I've worked with clients one-on-one, I gave them my own, private childbirth class, and I've seen, Baruch Hashem, the amazing transformations. So I said to myself, okay, I want to build an online childbirth class so that every woman in Am Yisrael can have a class, and can have a class that also talks to from the Torah woman, not just having to attend, right? And part of creating Geula Mamas is backwards, because I said, I can't put everything into my childbirth class, but I can refer them and say, if you're interested in this topic, here's an expert who talks for an hour about this topic. So I sort of went about this backwards, but the whole time we've been doing this, it's been to create a resource for this childbirth class that I feel like that's really what I've been planning for 5 years. I feel like it just needs to be in the world. So I'm going to take this conversation and say to myself, don't worry, just keep working on it. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Don't be scared. For me, it's scary. It's just, I'm a quiet person. I don't like even putting this online. When I press that button and I hit publish, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's going out into the world. I like to just be in my house and not really, talk about things a lot. So it's a lot of sharing, but I feel like that is what's on Hashem. That's what Hashem wants in the world. I have this unique knowledge. I have these unique experiences. And this is our next conversation. So
that's right. And that's what Hashem wants you to do. So how many classes is this series going to be?
I think it's going to be about 9 classes. I'm trying to work it out. I don't want to overwhelm people with too many classes, but I also want to get enough information that it's not too much information in one class. And I'm also writing, thank you for asking, I'm also writing up a mini class so that most of our husbands want to be amazing husbands. But in the greater world, shall we say, men are expected to attend childbirth classes with their wives, which is not always mat'im for our life situation. And then there are also certain halachas, that would specifically what is he allowed to or not allowed to do. So I am creating a class, and then each class will have a mini class that goes with it for the Abba, like an Abba mini class, so that he'll get 10 or 15 minutes with what he needs to know and how can he be the best Abba. This is sort of based on many, many years ago. I went to a birth, and it was a last minute sort of birth. I didn't know these people. Usually I would know someone for months and months and months beforehand. I was filling in for an emergency situation. And the birth sort of went sideways. It was a whole strange thing because it wasn't her planned doctor. It was someone who was filling in. So it was a very strange birth. Wow. And then there was a little bit of a medical condition. It was a strange thing. So the baby was crying. We ended up with this very distraught baby and a mother who couldn't deal with him because there was this medical thing going on. Now the father had been outside in the hallway. He was very, very religious, very Haredi, and he didn't feel comfortable. He didn't know. So he had been in the hallway, but I could hear him saying Tehillim. I could hear him chanting Tehillim the whole time. And he came in, and the baby's crying, and he was fascinated. We were talking about the placenta and how he had learned in Gemara that it was Eitz Chaim, and the doctor yelled at me because I showed it to him. I'm like, get over yourself, Anyways, at some point I said, the baby has been hearing your voice all of these 9 months, and the father's voice is a deep voice, so it resonates. It goes through the amniotic fluid. The baby knows your voice, and he's been hearing you with your Tehillim. If you just hold him and just say Tehillim like you've been doing, it's gonna make all the difference in the world. So he did that. And I'm getting chills now. Within a few moments, the baby totally calmed down, and he snuggled to sleep. And then I did a follow-up visit. That was only one part of it. I did a follow-up visit, and this mother tells me, she says, because not all doulas do follow-up visits. So for me, this is a part of this package. If I went to your birth, I'm doing a follow-up visit, right? So I come follow up, and she says the whole pregnancy he was disconnected. And I had this vision of our family, we are very, very, very Haredi, but I've always had a vision of having, this really warm, loving family, and he's been so disconnected. And after that experience, he won't put the baby down. And he's saying to him and putting him to sleep. It was 3 days later, and it was I know somewhere in the world there's a 20-year-old boy whose life and family was changed, I was tearing up,
It's so big. It's so beautiful and special. Yes,
it's so big, and I just want to be able to.
Yeah, I want to ask you, include in your series one class for the mother of the birthing mother.
That's so funny. So that is my thing.
That's awesome.
I want to have a bubby course, which is probably going to be in the future, which is for sisters and grandmothers and people who are going. It's probably not going to be right now because like you said, I have to get it started. But that's the other piece in my mind where you don't have to know to be a doula. You don't have to learn to be a full doula, but 100%. How can you be there for your daughter or your sister or your friends? That's absolutely something I'm doing. So yes, this is the big announcement.
Sivi, when are you launching this? When
I finish getting it ready.
It doesn't work like that. When's your tentative launch date?
So a friend did that to me. And we picked last Hanukkah, but Hanukkah has passed. So right now the whole class is on little Post-it notes all over this giant whiteboard that I bought. And I have it laid out according to classes and everything with colors and everything. Part of it's also just time. I mean, Baruch Hashem, I am a mother and I have children, and I don't want my kids to get lost in between the weeds. But I think that's an excuse. I'm telling myself that's an excuse. That's
absolutely
because you're scared.
Very bad one too.
Yeah. So Pesach
you can do it by Shavuos.
I think I can do it by Shavuos?
You can do it by Shavuos.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. All right. Challenge accepted.
Do one a week from now to Shavuos, and it's up.
All right. Whew. Okay.
You can do it. You can do it. And you know what you do? I'm going to give you another tool, okay? This is a real tool I'm going to give you, okay? I do a series. It's called Chaya, which is one installment. It's 15 minutes a day, okay? And I pre-record them and I put them up and I send them out every day and email goes out. And I have a rule about this. I never redo an installment. I never redo it.
Wow.
Once it's recorded, it's done. Okay? I say Tehillim beforehand. I trust the Rebbeinu Shalom. I say my piece, and it's done. And I never redo it. And if I have something else to say, I'll say it next time. I'll say another thing. But you know what? You just do it because you're going to do it. One day this week, you're going to take the time and you're going to do class 1 or class 2, whichever you want to start with. You don't have to start with class 1. You can start with class 5, whichever is the easiest for you to give. You start with one class. You record it. That's it. Don't go back. Okay? Don't keep going back and keep changing. Just do it. And it's going to be great. Is it going to be perfect? I promise you no. Promise you no. But you can go back next year and make the second edition. But now get the first one out because you can give a lot of really good information that will help people already.
There's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying.
Okay.
While we're on the subject of perfection, I'm going to segue us into Pesach. Okay. Pesach. I have Pesach trauma. Years ago, I was a go with the flow kind of person, and I loved Pesach. I had no problem with it. And one example, I went once to Sameh Chametz, and I didn't really have a lot of chametz, whatever it was, and this rabbi started asking, this long-bearded Rav started asking me all these questions about my closets and what was in them. And one of the things I mentioned was a food processor, and he made me go home and pull out Q-tips and bleach and start cleaning. I'm like, what? You know? So I call rabbi trauma. I started to get very stressed out about Pesach over the years, right? I didn't start out that way. So now I'm sort of, I realize that rabbi is that rabbi, and I'm sort of going back to loving Pesach again. I'm working on it, but it took a lot of years of work. And I know that we all have these different voices, and that's the time, like, oh my gosh, if there's even a tiny bit of chametz, So, yeah, what can you say to Pesach?
Okay, so first of all, even a tiny bit of chametz and the instruction all about chametz applies to where we eat and what we eat. That means that everywhere else in the house, we don't eat anywhere else on Pesach. We mevatel all of the chametz anywhere else. I mean, we say it doesn't exist, and we do that. Okay, we clean, meaning we do whatever we do, but we reserve the real energy for where it really makes a difference, which is in the kitchen. And there, only the things that we're going to be using on Pesach. So things that we're not going to be using on Pesach, you ask your Rav, okay? And whatever your Rav says about your chametz sticker pots or your chametz sticker food processor or whatever it is that you ask your Rav. And if you say, this is just too stringent for me, is there a way for me to do it less, depending on what my family situation is and how young my youngest baby or whatever's going on in my life or my health. And the Rav can work together with your Rav who knows you, can work together with you and help you. And if at a certain point you need more leniencies, he could give you more leniencies when you have a Rav that knows you. But where it really makes a difference in the kitchen, there we give ourselves enough time. What usually happens is women spend so much time on where it doesn't matter, on the spring cleaning, that when it comes to where it does matter, in the kitchen, that's where we're already bleary-eyed. We've been up for a fortnight. We don't know our left from our right anymore. Forget our, Haman and Mordechai. Here we're totally tzimish. We don't know what's going on. And then we're supposed to do the most important kinds of cleaning. So what I started to do is already bits of my kitchen. Again, parts of my kitchen that I am going to be selling. Parts of my kitchen, I just want to make sure that there's that the extra kind of bits that are in my kitchen that I'm not going to be using on Pesach, I'm going through those, making sure that I started there so that the kitchen I know is going to be the way that I want it to be long before Pesach, and I'll have enough time to be preparing in my kitchen always is what I do a week before Pesach. So what I'm going to be doing with you, Sivi, is I'll share with you my newly prepared the Jewish workshops, 10 lists that will help your Pesach be easy. Okay? It's actually a little workbook that can help you prepare for Pesach. There's also a guided imagery, Positive Pesach, that I will share with you, okay? Because that, well, it helps us to, as I mentioned before, that our imagination is the prism through which we experience anything. So if I experience Pesach through my prism of anxiety, stress, I can't do anything well enough anyway, I'm always going to fail, or whatever it is, whether it's voices, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a vision of everything just, you know, imploding on me, whatever whatever my imagination brings up. If I change it, and if I input something else into my imagination, and we can do that, that's the news here, is that we're not stuck with it. The way that we have been experiencing things through our imagination is not forever. It's just a habit of thought, but it's not us. We tend to think that's who I am. It's not who I am. It's just been my habit until now, but I can change that habit. So the thoughts of, it's never going to be good enough, it's never going to be perfect enough, that's just been a habit of thought. It's not who you are. It's not who we are. We could change that. So we can input into our minds a new positive Pesach view and change that for ourselves. And that's actually how we got to speak in the first place, because I told you that I have a guided imagery for birth. That my daughter, when she was already in her 8th month, she said to me, Mommy, if you don't make me guided imagery now, who will? You know, like, you have to do it for me. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go and do it. And just because she begged me, I said, I mean, people had asked me for years, don't you have a guided imagery for birth? And I was, you know why I hadn't done it yet? Perfectionism. Because I thought, well, if I'm doing it, it has to be right. But when she was in her 8th month, it was like, no more time. I have to do it now. I was like, okay, so I'm just going to do it. And what comes out is just going to come out. And Hashem helped. And she said she liked it. And other people liked it too. So sometimes when we're against the wall,
I've listened to it. It's amazing. And I'm not like in the middle of giving birth. And it's so relaxing and beautiful and inspiring. It's amazing.
Okay, so I'll be giving you that as well. And but again, I'm not immune to perfectionism just because I'm a big talker. It still rears its head, and sometimes I will procrastinate for that reason with projects. But I know I've had enough experience to know that sometimes I just have to say, that's it, just get down and do it, and what it is, it is. And again, never go back. Don't go back and change things, because that could become obsessive, because you can never make something perfect. You can never make it perfect. So Pesach, we can change.
Well, what you're saying about going back, also with Pesach, I know for myself, sometimes you clean a closet, you clean the refrigerator, and then you see another spot, and then you get so busy cleaning over the same things that truly, when you get to the next point, you are exhausted.
Right. So we cannot do that about the entire house. About the ceiling fan, it doesn't make a difference. About the trissim, it doesn't make a difference. The only place it's going to make a difference is on surfaces you're going to be using for Pesach. In your fridge, or actually on your counter, the wall where there's going to be that, you know, the places where you're not selling them, where you're actually going to be putting food for Pesach. And so there, if you give yourself a week to do your kitchen, you can do it in a relaxed way. We don't have to come to the kitchen with one day and to cook everything and to clean. Clearly, we had to think in advance. We still have time now to think in advance and to plan. And so we have to work backwards when it comes to Seder. We have to think. So if I'm cooking for Seder night, if I'm going to be home, how many days do I need to prepare the food? Realistically, maybe 2 or 3 days. Give yourself 2 or 3 days so you can take naps. You can have the food in the house. You need to have the food and everything in the house. You need to have a kitchen ready by whether it's 2 or 3 days before Pesach or whether it's 1 week before Pesach. I usually like to do Shabbos Agad or Pesach. That's just because it suits me to have that enough time to be able to cook and freeze and bake. And so we'll eat, you know, whatever we eat those days or in the park or we'll eat some cooked fish in the Pesach kitchen. It's okay. You know, it's not going to be a problem. And that way you come into Pesach rested, happy, and you know that you've really done your best. You've cleaned everything the way that you wanted it to be because you gave yourself enough time. It's about giving ourselves enough time and not being perfectionistic about things that really don't count when it comes to Pesach. We tend to think, well, I come this way once a year, I might as well do it properly. So come this way after Pesach. That's what I would say.
That's really like profound.
Give yourself a time where it counts. What's it? Yes.
I'm trying to envision also, like, let's say you do the counter and you do the refrigerator, you do all those things, and you don't have to get stuck with redoing them because you can always wipe them up again. You know, like they're gonna get, you know how you get everything ready for Pesach and it's so beautiful, and then like somebody who's alive walks into your Dalit Amos and they make a breathe, and then everything gets a mess, and it's like, I've worked so hard. You know, because that's
right.
the other, it's like the partner with perfectionism.
Right.
You know.
That's right. So I like to talk about the Thursday night kitchen. Okay, if somebody walks into a kitchen Thursday night and they see potato peels flying and there's a mixer whirring and there's, you know, eggshells and sugar flying everywhere and there's, you know, a delivery of vegetables on the floor in the middle of the kitchen and chickens defrosting on the side. If somebody would come into that Thursday afternoon kitchen and say, it shouldn't be like this. Kitchens shouldn't be like this. Are they right or are they wrong?
They probably, I would say, are wrong, because you should never say you should.
Right. But the kitchen is supposed to be like this, right? It's in use. It's a work in progress. Okay? Yeah. Okay. So we're all a work in progress. Pesach is a work in progress. Even a messy Pesach kitchen is kosher.
Right. Even a messy Pesach kitchen is kosher. That is very profound.
Okay. Okay. So we mustn't confuse our desire for order with the kashrus of Pesach. So a very messy, filled with action Thursday afternoon kitchen is totally kosher. In fact, it's perfect. It's perfect because this is the work in progress. It's supposed to look like this. It's supposed to be like this. And so my kosher Erev Pesach kitchen, with whatever's happening all around it, okay, is supposed to be exactly like this. This is perfect. So I once had, I mentor women, and sometimes I go to Yerushalayim and meet them. Sometimes they come to me. And there was a very wealthy woman who has houses like all around the world. And she came to Beitar, and she came up to my office to speak to me. So we came up the staircase, and she passed, you know, a few of the happening places in my house on the way up. And she says to me, Chaya Hinda, she said, your house is so perfectly imperfect. And I said, yes, it really is. Okay. She passed the laundry area, and she passed, you know, a child's room, and it was perfectly imperfect because it's a work in progress. There are people living here. It's a happening place, you know, it's a family abode, and it's supposed to be like this. So whenever you look at a place that's been cleaned yet messed up, that's good. It's good.
I think also sometimes it sounds good in the story. You imagine, all the bustling, happy Erev Shabbos, like you were saying with the mixer and everything. But when you're living in it, right, it can be like the walls are closing in on you sometimes, because I have to clean it afterwards, and I let it get this messy, like sometimes.
Can we just pause, Sivi, and see that was your voice there saying, it was the voice inside your head saying, I let it get like this. Mm-hmm. That's your imagination imposing a judgment on you that you didn't choose, or you don't have to choose to listen to anymore. You could say, I choose to let it be like this right now. I choose to let it be perfectly imperfect right now. This is good, and I'm enjoying it. It's just choosing the voice in your head.
Right.
And we could all do that for ourselves and make Pesach a lot less stressful for ourselves and everybody else, because mother's a maniac running around the house, and the kids don't hear the voice inside her head. They don't understand what's driving her berserk like this. But she is being driven by some inner force that's beyond nature. And so we have to understand we don't have to be driven like that. We don't have to be
I was at the park the other day, and I've sort of committed to myself that I'm not having Pesach conversations with other people. You know, I will have a Pesach conversation with you because I'm trying to move away from these like years of Pesach trauma. And I love Pesach, and it was getting me really frustrated, right? So, but somebody came into my bench, my park bench, and she started talking Pesach. So she's telling this story about how last year she was 7 months pregnant with her 5th child, and the oldest one was like 7. Okay.
Wow.
Yes. And how she would clean all night. She would when her husband came home, she'd start Pesach cleaning, and she'd Pesach clean until 4 a.m. when he would get up for davening, and then she'd take a nap until 7 and get the kids off to school. Like this whole thing, and there was no talking to her because I tried to say, you know, maybe this year take it easy, and she's like, no, it was worth it in the end. It was worth it because then everything was, and I'm like, okay, I'm not listening. And it's like, you know, mentally. You know, like you can't, I just don't think that that's what Hashem wants from me. I mean, maybe it's some certain years it's nice to spring clean when you Pesach clean because there's that energy and there's a renewal and it does feel nice. But it's almost like we're taking Pesach and we're blaming this beautiful, innocent pearl for all of our difficulties in his honor. You know, like Pesach didn't tell me to do all that.
Right. Pesach we need to adjust the way that we prepare Pesach very drastically according to the situation, the time, the strength that we have, and what our needs are and what our family's needs are. I make Pesach very differently now when my youngest are 9 and 8 than I used to make Pesach when my oldest was like 10 and I had, you know, Baruch Hashem, a whole slew of them, and I was basically making Pesach by myself when my husband was in college and working. It was a whole different life. And so we need to assess, and we need to think, and we need to reflect, and we need to from year to year, what worked for me, what didn't work for me. I know that my constitution is such that if I stay up past midnight 2 nights, I will be sick on the 3rd day. I've experienced that so many times. And I remember having friends who they would be up until 2 and then up again at 6 to get the kids out. And I knew that if I did that, I would literally fall on my face. I couldn't survive. I just don't have the physical stamina to be able to do that. So I had to start a whole lot earlier than they did because I couldn't do that kind of crunch days and then stay up for the Seder night. I just couldn't do it. So I had to take more time over Pesach because just who I was. And we have to be honest with ourselves, and we have to be real, and we have to look at the needs of everybody around us, and then we have to plan. And once we plan and understand, and that's why I encourage you to use the list that I'm going to be giving you, planning makes all the difference. If we can go according to plan, we need to
see that, like, you know, I'm thinking back as you're talking about different years, and part of, for me, the problem is planning, but also not realizing, even over many years, how long things would really take. So there were years that I thought I planned and I thought I was ready in advance and I was really calm, and then I ended up pulling an all-nighter or something, you know, right before Pesach, but then the next year I tried again and I failed. I, you know, ended up pulling an all-nighter again. There was one year that I had to go to mikveh Erev Pesach, Seder night. And we lived in a small caravan in a yeshuv, and we didn't have a bathtub. So I had to actually go to the mikveh and have it open for me, you know, 3 hours beforehand. Wow. And that was the best year because I was so relaxed. I came to the Seder having slept, having bathed, having relaxed. I had to sit there. There was nobody, you know, I just wait and it was really weird because years and years later in random conversations, because my friends and I, we don't talk about mikvah. I mean, that's private. Somehow in random conversations, it came out that the year that I went to mikveh Erev Pesach, 2 people that I know were supposed to go to mikveh and canceled. They did not go. They did not make it. Probably because they had bathtubs in their house, you know, whereas I had to go out. And that, like, it was very profound for me to realize, first of all, maybe in the schools of the mitzvah that I did, but also just to realize, like, just to pretend that the day before Pesach, I'm going out. Just put that in, you know, and then move everything up a day or two, you know. But the planning of it can be, maybe some of us are better at time at imagining how long things will take or not. I don't know.
Right. It's only from experience, meaning we have to remember from previous times, it takes a day to clean the fridge, maybe. Like, I remember it took a day to really clean it and get in the nooks and crannies and do all the things and cover it the way that I wanted it, meaning a day including making the meals and feeding everybody and doing everything else that needed to be taken care of that day. So we have to factor in whatever else has to factor in. So one day just for a fridge, you know, that means one person. If you have 4 people working, well, it's a whole different thing, you know, because one can feed and then one can do the fridge. And then, we finished it in 2 hours. It doesn't have to take a whole day, depending on on who's helping you and who you need to feed and what else you need to do that day. Yeah, there's so many factors that need to be taken into consideration. There probably is an algorithm that someone could come up with. But I'm not going to be doing that one. That's not for me.
How old are your children? Multiplied by how many of them have ADHD? Divided by, you know. Oh my goodness. This is so fun. We could probably continue this for many, many hours, and I wish we could, but we're going to wrap it up now. And we have all these goodies that we're going to be giving everybody. Pesach goodies and this beautiful, beautiful visualization that you made. It's really, really exciting. And we have fun things to give away. So before we do that, I have a question for you, Chaya Hinda. I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath, if you don't mind. And I want you to use your imagination and your visualization to imagine that you are standing in front of the Ezrat Nashim at Har Sinai. So you have all the neshamot of all the women who have come before you, and all the women who are in the future will ever be born. You have all the women of Am Yisrael. And you have one thing you can say. What's the first thing that pops into your mind?
Hashem loves you. He's giving you the Torah. That's what I would say.
Hashem loves you. He's giving you the Torah. The Torah is like, I think a lot of people, sometimes people will say, you know, the Torah says, the Torah says, the Torah says, especially in the Frum communities. And it always irks me because I'm like, no, Hashem says, Hashem says through the Torah. He's given us life. Life is like, you know, my computer. And the Torah just shows us, it's the user manual. Choose life. How are you going to have a good life? How are you going to navigate? But don't ever use it as a sledgehammer or something bad. Or the Torah says, you know, Hashem loves us.
Torah is light. Torah is love and light and how to connect. Torah is everything. And Hashem gave it to us because He loves us.
Feeling that, oh my goodness. All right. You know it's going to become a Geula Mamas magnet. So nice. This is from Ruthie Arkush. She says, how can I create more balance in my life? Okay. So this Geula Mamas magnet is going to Leah Charney Presarovich. She's going to get this magnet. Somebody in the future is going to get the magnet that was just created today. Yay! Awesome. And the way you are eligible for magnets and free things we're going to give away, something else very, very awesome right now, is by joining the Geula Mamas Club on Facebook, We have a private Facebook group. It's closed. Nobody else can see what you're writing in there. So if you're a person listening to this and you're a Facebook type of person, come and join the club, the Geula Mamas Club. And that way you can ask questions. A lot of the presenters on the show are in the Facebook group, and that makes you eligible to win free things. So what are you giving away today, Chaya Hinda?
So I mentioned my Chayil program, which is a 15-minute installment every day. It's an audio, email, or by phone. And so we'll give away a free month of Chayil. And basically what we'll do is I'll let whoever wins it choose when they would like to have their month. If they think that Pesach is when they'd like to have it and they'd like to start, let's say Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and have it for the month of Nisan, they could do that. If they wanted to do it after Pesach, they think it's going to be easier for them to listen and commit to listening 15 minutes a day afterwards, they could do it after. So they could choose, let's say up to 6 months, they could choose when they want to take that month.
So they can choose up to 6 months, 1 month of Chayil, which is every day some inspiration. Wow, that is so cool. All right, that is going to Jordan Ruas. She is the exciting person. Woo! This is so, it's very fun.
Welcome, I'll be in touch.
Yeah, I'll get her in touch with you. That will be so fun. And everybody's a winner because you are getting a birth visualization. You are getting a Pesach visualization. We are getting a Pesach guidebook, you said also, right? Of
Yes,
10
lists.
10 lists. And we're going to be working on, we don't have the link yet, so we don't know exactly the discount, but through, what was it, Jewish workshops, right?
Jewish workshops, Living Consciously. The community is called the Living Consciously community. Yeah.
Great. And we'll have all the links up for you. So we're going to have a link there that will link to Chaya Hinda's workshop that's through Jewish workshops, and you're going to have some discount. We have to speak to Jewish workshops to find out exactly what that will be. But if you sign up through that, you're going to get a discount for all the Geula Mamas. This has been absolutely amazing. Thank you for joining us today. And remember that I love you. Have a good day. Goodbye.